Hey, buddy, hit that subscribe. Just a sec for you, but it means the world to me. The Miller family reunion hit the same way it always did. Hot sun, loud laughter, and that familiar lakeside park we've been using forever. Red and white checkered tablecloths flapped in the breeze. Kids were screaming like tiny maniacs with water balloons. And the smell of grilled burgers hung thick in the air. About 70-something relatives showed up this year. 3 generations deep, all packed into one place like it was some low-budget reality show waiting to explode. And right on cue, my younger brother Ethan made his entrance. Dude rolled in slow, windows down, music thumping, parking his brand-new metallic blue BMW right by the entrance like it was a museum exhibit. You could practically hear him thinking, yeah, everybody's looking. Within minutes, he had a crowd, uncles, cousins, even one of my dad's friends, circling the car while he popped the hood like he was unveiling a spaceship. "It's the 5 Series," Ethan said, grinning ear to ear. "Fully loaded. Lease is kind of steep, about $850 a month. But sales director life. Gotta look successful to be successful, right?" My mom stood by the dessert table, smiling like her kid had just cured cancer. "He's doing amazing at that pharmaceutical company," she told anyone within earshot. Dad chimed in proudly. 3 states under his territory now. Sales director at 29. That's real career growth. Meanwhile, I was doing what I always did, standing quietly in the buffet line, loading up potato salad and grilled chicken, half listening, half invisible. Same story every year. Ethan shining, my parents glowing, and me, the older sister who works from home and made interesting choices. That's when Aunt Linda slid up next to me, piling coleslaw onto her plate like nothing was about to go sideways. Linda was my dad's younger sister, a management consultant who lived out of airports and conference rooms. She actually understood my world. She smiled at me and said casually, "So, Maya, how's that $900,000 consulting contract going? You must be close to wrapping it up by now." The world stopped. No joke. Everything froze. Ethan's voice cut off mid-sentence about horsepower. My dad turned so fast, I thought he'd pull something. Someone dropped a fork. Even the kids paused their water balloon war like they sensed drama loading. Dad stared at me. "What contract?" I set my plate down slowly, heart pounding but face calm. "It's going well," I said evenly. "We're about 3 months from completion. Clients happy so far." Aunt Linda, completely unaware she just lit a match, kept going. "And they were talking about extending it another year, right? That had pushed the total past $1 million. My mom walked over, her hands shaking. "Maya, what is she talking about?" Linda finally looked around and realized the entire family had gone dead silent. Her face changed. "Oh, you didn't tell them?" I took a breath. We didn't really talk about details. Dad's voice was tight. "What? Contract?" I looked at him and said calmly, "I have a 2-year consulting agreement with North Shore Technologies. Fixed price engagement. Just under $900,000 total, plus expenses." And just like that, the reunion turned into a reckoning. They thought I was barely scraping by, working in yoga pants from my couch. They had no idea that in the next 5 minutes, everything they believed about me and about success was about to completely fall apart. The silence didn't last long. Ethan was the first one to snap out of it, and honestly, I should have seen it coming. He let out this short laugh, the kind people use when they're trying to convince themselves something is a joke. "Okay, nah," he said, shaking his head. "That's got to be a misunderstanding. You're a freelance consultant. You work from home. You make, what, $50 an hour doing PowerPoint slides." A few relatives nodded, like that explanation made them feel better. I looked at him and corrected him, calmly. "I'm an independent strategy consultant. I specialize in digital transformation for large companies." Ethan scoffed. "That's just a fancy way of saying freelance." "No," I said. "It's a fancy way of saying companies pay me to fix problems they don't know how to solve." My mom's hand flew to her chest. $900,000 over 2 years, she whispered. That's almost. For $150,000 a year, Dad finished, doing the math in his head. "That can't be right." "It is," I said. Though that's revenue, not take-home. Aunt Linda nodded immediately. She already understood. Fixed price engagement, right? Deliverables based. Exactly. Dad looked lost. You're telling me companies pay you almost $500,000 a year, and you work from your living room? Home office. I corrected. And sometimes on site. Ethan crossed his arms. Bro, I work 80-hour weeks sometimes. I grind. I'm out there every day. There's no way you're pulling numbers like that in sweatpants. I shrugged. Sometimes I'm in sweatpants. Sometimes I'm on video calls with executives who control billion-dollar budgets. The clothes don't change the value. That's when Uncle Rob jumped in. Hold up. You said Fortune 500 companies. Plural? Yes. How many clients do you have? 3 right now. North Shore is the biggest. I also have a mid-sized manufacturing client and a project-based engagement with a software firm. Aunt Linda did the math faster than anyone else. So your total revenue this year is, what, around $650? I nodded, give or take. My mom looked like she might actually pass out. That's more than your father makes, she said quietly. Dad sat down hard on the bench. I've been a surgeon for 30 years. I know, I said gently. Different fields, different structures. You have stability. I have variability. Ethan's face went from disbelief to straight-up embarrassment. I've been bragging about my 95 grand salary in my BMW, he muttered. You're making 6 times that. I met his eyes. You also get benefits, bonuses, and a company car allowance. Your total comp is solid. It's just different. But you said you couldn't afford Vegas for my bachelor party last year, he shot back. I could afford it, I said. I chose not to. That one landed. I was in the middle of a critical project milestone. I continued. Spending $2 grand on flights and hotels for a weekend of partying wasn't priority. Dad looked up. So you weren't struggling? No, I said firmly. You just assumed I was because I live modestly. A cousin spoke up from behind us. I thought you were barely getting by. You drive that old Honda. It's a 2019 Civic. I said. Paid off. Reliable. Gets me where I need to go. Ethan stared at the keys to his BMW like they betrayed him. So you're telling me, he said slowly, that you make over $500,000 a year and you live like a broke grad student on purpose? I smiled slightly. Not broke. Intentional. And that's when Dad asked a question that changed the entire vibe of the reunion. What does your money situation actually look like? They thought my income was shocking. What they were about to hear next, the savings, the investments, the numbers I never talked about, was going to hit way harder. When Dad asked that question, the air got heavy. What does your money situation actually look like? A few people shifted closer. Others pretended not to listen while doing a terrible job at it. Even the kids had stopped yelling. 70-plus relatives, and somehow the whole reunion had turned into a financial intervention nobody asked for. I didn't rush my answer, not because I was being dramatic, but because once I said it out loud, there was no putting it back in the box. It's fine, I said finally. Stable. Mom blinked. Stable how? I took a breath. I have about 1.1 million in retirement accounts. Another 300-something thousand in investments. Around 180 in cash reserves. Dad's eyebrows shot up. Cash reserves. Yes. Emergency fund. Business buffer. Peace of mind. Someone gasped. I didn't even look to see who. My condo's paid off, I continued. Bought it 6 years ago. No mortgage. It's worth a little over $400,000 now. Silence. The kind that buzzes in your ears. Dad swallowed. So your net worth is? Just over $2 million. Ethan sat down like his legs had given out. You're joking. No, you're actually serious. Yes. He ran a hand through his hair. So you're a millionaire and you drive a used Honda? Correct. Aunt Linda nodded like this was the least surprising thing she'd heard all day. That tracks. Mom looked genuinely heartbroken. We thought you were barely hanging on. I know, I said quietly. Dad stared at the picnic table. We told everyone you were figuring things out. I was I said. I just didn't do it loudly. Ethan laughed bitterly. I lease a BMW for $850 a month to look successful. You're actually successful and don't care if anyone knows. I care, I said, just not about the same things. A cousin chimed in. Why didn't you ever say anything? I shrugged, because nobody asked, and when I tried to explain, it felt like I was being talked over or brushed off. Mom's voice cracked. We didn't mean to make you feel that way. I know, I said, but after a while, you stop sharing when it feels like no one's listening. Aunt Linda stepped in, sensing the tension. When Maya started consulting, she lived on $40,000 a year and invested everything else. Build a safety net before taking bigger risks. That's not luck, that's discipline. Dad looked up at her. You knew all this? Of course, she said. We talk. I ask questions. That one stung more than anything. Ethan looked at me, eyes wide. So when you said you couldn't come on those expensive trips or upgrade your phone or buy nicer clothes, I was choosing long-term freedom over short-term flexing. I said, every time. He shook his head slowly. I thought you were just behind. No, I said, I was building. That's when Mom finally said it. We were wrong about you. I nodded. Yeah. No anger. No smugness. Just truth. Then Uncle Rob leaned in and asked, genuinely curious, so what do you actually do all day? For the first time in years, it didn't sound like a joke. They were done doubting my income. Now they wanted to understand how I did it, and whether they'd been wrong about my choices all along. Uncle Rob's question hung in the air. So, what do you actually do all day? Not sarcastic, not dismissive, genuine. That alone felt weird. I smiled slightly. I help big companies fix expensive problems. He nodded slowly. Like, what kind of problems? I leaned against the picnic table. The kind that cost them millions if they mess it up. Technology changes. Broken systems. Bad strategy. Growth that's outpacing their structure. Aunt Michelle frowned. That sounds complicated. It is, I said. That's why they hire people like me instead of guessing. Ethan blinked. Wait. So North Shore isn't paying you for advice. They're paying you to actually run stuff. Exactly, I said. I'm leading their digital transformation, migrating legacy systems to the cloud, redesigning workflows, training teams, making sure the whole thing doesn't crash and burn. Dad exhaled slowly. That's executive-level work. Yes. A few heads turned. The energy shifted again. And your other clients? Uncle Rob asked. One wants help restructuring their supply chain. Another's trying to enter a new market without lighting money on fire. Aunt Linda jumped in. Most companies don't need someone full-time at that level. Hiring a permanent executive would cost more than a 2-year consulting engagement. So they rent your brain, Ethan said. I laughed. Pretty much. Mom looked thoughtful. What does your week look like? That question hit different. It was the first time in years my mom had asked about my work without judgment. Monday through Wednesday, I'm usually in meetings, either on-site or on video calls. Strategy sessions, progress reviews, workshops with leadership teams. And the rest of the week? Writing, planning, deliverables, training materials, roadmaps, making sure what we promised actually gets done. Dad frowned. That sounds like more than 40 hours. It is, I said, around 60 most weeks. He looked surprised. But it's flexible? Very. I control my schedule. I choose my clients. I set my rates. Ethan shook his head. So you don't have a boss? I have clients, I said, which is better and worse. A cousin laughed. That explains why you always miss random family stuff. Aunt Michelle cleared her throat. When you skipped my daughter's wedding events, we thought you were being difficult. I had a board-level presentation that week. I said, couldn't reschedule it. Board level? Dad repeated. Yes, 12 executives. One mistake would have cost the company millions. Mom winced. We thought you just didn't want to come. I wanted to, I said, but professionalism matters. Ethan stared at me. They pay you almost 40 grand a month. Yes, and you treat it like it's normal. It is, I said, when you've earned it. Aunt Linda smiled. That's the difference between flash and substance. Dad nodded slowly. I told you to get a real job. I remember. He swallowed. I was wrong. That apology landed harder than the money reveal. The reunion slowly restarted around us. Kids running again, people whispering, cousins sneaking glances my way like I'd suddenly unlocked a secret level of adulthood. But Ethan wasn't done. He leaned closer and lowered his voice. So, how did you even learn to do all this? They finally understood what I did. Now they wanted to know how I built it, and whether they could have done the same thing, if they'd made different choices. That Ethan's question came out quieter than the rest. So, how did you even learn to do all this? I didn't answer right away. Not because it was complicated, but because the truth wasn't glamorous. Slowly, I said, and on purpose. He frowned. What does that mean? It means 5 years ago. I didn't look impressive. At all. A few people leaned in. I started with small local businesses. I continued, charging $75 an hour. Nothing fancy. Basic strategy. Process fixes. Stuff no one wanted to do. Dad looked surprised. That's it. That was the starting line. I said, not the finish. Aunt Linda nodded. Everyone sees the outcome. Nobody sees the reps. I went on. I reinvested everything. Courses, certifications, books, conferences. I said no to vacations. No to lifestyle upgrades. No to keeping up with friends who were buying houses and leasing cars. Ethan glanced down at his shoes. I lived on 40 grand a year, I said, even when I made more. Mom's eyes widened. You never told us that. I didn't want sympathy, I said. I wanted momentum. A cousin asked, weren't you scared? All the time, I said. That's why I built a runway. Emergency fund. No debt. No pressure to say yes to bad clients. Dad nodded slowly. You minimize risk. Exactly, I said, so I could take smart risks. Ethan scratched his head. So Meridian, sorry, North Shore wasn't luck. No, I said, it was 5 years of stacking skills and relationships. Aunt Linda added, she's also excellent at networking. She follows up, delivers value even when she's not being paid. That's how referrals happen, I said. That's how premium clients show up. Ethan let out a breath. I thought success just happened once you got promoted. It doesn't, I said. It compounds when you stop chasing appearances. That one hit him hard. He laughed without humor. I've been chasing the look of success instead of the math. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Dad rubbed his temples. You lived below your means while everyone else was upgrading. Yes. And now you don't have to impress anyone. Exactly. Ethan looked at me, serious now. I have 8 grand in savings. That's it. I nodded. I know. He swallowed. I'm 29 and stressed about money all the time. I was too, I said, until I changed how I played the game. A long pause. Can you help me? He asked. Not sarcastic. Not defensive. Real. I can, I said, if you're actually ready to hear things you won't like. He laughed. At this point, lay it on me. I smiled. First rule, stop trying to look rich. The sun was starting to dip now. The reunion was winding down. But something bigger than food and small talk had shifted. Because for the first time, my brother wasn't competing with me. He was learning from me. The reunion exposed the truth. But the real test was coming next. What happens after everyone knows, and whether that knowledge actually changes anything as the reunion started to break apart. People drifted back to normal conversations, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every so often, someone would glance my way like they were seeing me for the first time. Ethan found me near the dessert table, his confidence from earlier completely gone. Hey, he said, can we talk? Just us. We walked down toward the lake, away from the noise. The water was calm, reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun. No audience, no pressure. He stopped inside. I've been a jerk to you. For years. I didn't argue. Yeah, you have. He nodded. I made fun of your work from home thing. Called it a side hustle. Told people you weren't serious. I remember. I thought I was ahead, he said. I had the title, the salary, the car. And I had peace, I said gently. He looked at the water. I lease a BMW I can barely afford because I want people to think I made it. I stayed quiet. You make real money, he continued. You have real assets. And you don't need anyone's approval. I don't need it, I said, but I used to want it. He turned to me. Why didn't you ever clap back? You could have shut me up any time. Because proving myself to you wouldn't have built my future, I said. My work did. That hit him hard. I'm tired, he admitted. I'm stressed, and I feel like I'm running on a treadmill. I nodded. That's what lifestyle inflation does. He laughed softly. You always talk like this, didn't you? I just didn't listen. Most people don't, until they have to. He hesitated. Do you really think I can turn this around? Yes, I said, but not if you keep chasing status. He swallowed. I want what you have. You don't want my income. I said, you want my systems. He frowned. What's the difference? Income is temporary. Systems compound. Silence again. Come over next week. I said, we'll look at your numbers. No judgment, just reality. His shoulders dropped like a weight had been lifted. I'd appreciate that. We walked back toward the cars. He looked at my Civic, then at his BMW. You know what's wild? He said. Your car says nothing about your life, and mine says everything. I smiled. Cars talk. Wealth whispers. He laughed. I'm going to hear that in my sleep. As we hugged goodbye, I realized something important. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, finally earned, not demanded. But the biggest realization came later, when I was alone. The drive home was quiet. No music, no podcasts, just the soft hum of my Civic and the glow of streetlights passing by. Same car, same road, same life I'd been living long before anyone clapped for it. That's when it hit me. Nothing actually changed today. The contract still existed. The deliverables were still due. North Shore would still wire the next payment right on schedule. My calendar for next week was already full. Strategy calls, progress reviews, deadlines that didn't care about family reunions or emotional revelations. Their shock didn't create my success. Their approval didn't validate it. I'd already validated myself. Over and over again. Every time a client renewed without negotiating. Every time an invoice was paid without question. Every time a referral came in because someone trusted my work enough to stake their reputation on it. That's where the real wins happened. I remember the first six-figure contract. The night I stared at the email, rereading it to make sure it was real. The first time my net worth crossed 7 figures. The quiet satisfaction, no applause, no audience, just math and consistency paying off. Those moments happened in silence. By the time my family noticed, the work was already done. I pulled into my condo complex. The place I bought years ago when no one thought what I was doing made sense. It was paid off. Solid. Unflashy. Mine. Tomorrow, I'd hop on a video call with North Shore's CTO. Next week, I'd finalize a proposal for another client. Next month, I'd decide whether I even want to take on something new. That was the real flex. Not the car. Not the title. Not the noise. Control. Control over my time. Control over my income. Control over my choices. My family finally understood what Aunt Linda had known all along, but their realization was just the epilogue. The story had been written years ago, one disciplined decision at a time. And here's the truth most people never learn. You don't win when people notice you. You win when you don't need them to.